Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're going to have a lot of fun this afternoon. Here's what I've got in mind. We're going to make a quick trip over to Paradise. Well, you know where that is. That's Nosara, Costa Rica, and that's my favorite billfish destination on the planet. I saw some big fish, including a giant yellowfin tuna, get caught there this week. I want to get the report from Craig. Then we're going to come up to the northeast corner of Florida, work our way down the east coast, through the Keys, up the west coast, and out the Panhandle. And we're going to get the best fishing reports from the best fishermen in each area. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats. You want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. By the Castaway Hat Company. That's the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. But I got a question on my mind today, and I know that all these guys face a lot of the same things I do. Where I live in Jacksonville, I drive across 4 bridges every day, and I see people standing on the bridge fishing. Well, there'll always be new people. Apparently just moved to Florida. I guess we're taking on over 1,000 a day, and they're standing on that bridge with a double hook rig, big old cable leaders, a big old hook through the back of a whole live shrimp, trying to catch a croaker or a whiting. Well, we all know that's not going to work. You want a light mono leader, a little 2/0 circle hook, one little knuckle of a fresh shrimp, and you'll have a bucket full in no time. I know every area's got situations just like that, so I want our guys tonight to help the beginners. When a beginner moves into your area, what is the most common mistake you see them make? But first, let's take a quick trip out to Costa Rica and check in with none other than Craig Sutton from Nosara Paradise. Craig, how we doing?
I'm good, Captain Ricky. Real good, brother.
Good deal, buddy. Man, I saw a pretty tuna on Facebook yesterday.
We've had several of those that we've lost in the last few weeks. And we've lost some of the real big ones, the 150 and up. But, that's the first decent sized one that we've gotten this year. But, I talk to the crews 2 or 3 times a week, and they, had the fishing stories. They had the 200-pounder up close to the boat.
Oh, yeah.
Come unplugged at the last second. Or, hit, and they fought it for a little while, and then something broke. I mean, those big yellowfin, they don't have any quit in them. And they're, Dave Marciano confirmed this with us last year and a few weeks ago at the Philadelphia show. And he said, pound for pound, the yellowfin's way stronger fish than a bluefin.
Huh. I didn't know that. I've caught some yellowfins, but I've never caught a bluefin. I'd like to someday. Well, that's Andy Marlin this week.
Oh, yeah. We had a couple double Marlin days. Didn't get a wahoo last week. Now, we did the week before last. Got some real nice wahoo. But, those big mahi are so consistent. Ricky, we haven't had one that was less than about 20 pounds in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm. And you've had
several.
And
that's a nice fish. Oh, nice big ones in the high 30s,
yep.
Low 40s. I had a client come up to me at the Houston Boat Show week before last, and he caught one that was 62 inches that they thought was 60 pounds. And that's the kind of the rule of thumb that I heard a few months ago, that once they get about over 32, 33, 34 pounds, they're only males, and they're all generally, if they're 60 inches, they're 60 pounds. They're 65 inches, they're 65 pounds. And that holds true, that one's 62 inches. That's a nice fish.
Yeah, Craigie, years ago, I caught the biggest female I've ever seen. She was 34 pounds. That's a monstrous female.
That's a monster female.
Yeah.
That's a monster female. That's about as big as I understand it. I'm no expert on, but what the biologists tell me, that's about as big a female as you'll find.
I'm with you. Well, man, the good part about getting reports from you every week, Craigie, is it is now the end of March, and they're only going to get better for you from here on out. I can't wait till next week. Please tell me we can check with you then.
Absolutely, man. I'm heading to the New Jersey show tomorrow. Come back and I spend a week here, and then me and Maddie are going down there for the annual kind of office vacation / fishing tournament.
Oh, that's the Ship of Fools, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one all my friends have been invited to. I appreciate it, Craig.
Me and Matt are fishing the 23 Adventure.
Gotcha.
The smallest boat in the fleet. But you know what? We're not scared.
Yeah, I wouldn't be scared. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you.
Craig Sutton from Nosara, Costa Rica. Time to hit Florida. That means Northeast Florida time and Captain David Voorhees. Captain David, how we doing?
Hey, man, we couldn't be better. I mean, for March, I think we've had a pretty good March. It started out really nice, but you know what they say about March: in like a lamb, out like a lion. So,
I think it's supposed to be in like a lion, out like a lamb, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but it started as a lamb, so It's going to go out like a lion. I mean, we had a pretty good front come through this week, so one of our better fronts that we've seen. I'm not complaining. We needed the rain. I thought it was going to dirty the water up, but really it hasn't. We've had an influx of some really clear water, but it's also been cold water. We get those west winds, Ricky, and when it blows for a long period of time, I mean, we've had some really good winds there last week, and I think what happened, we had a little cold water upwelling, and it brought in some beautiful water. The water's clear, and but the temperature's dropped, and you can tell it's affected the bite. The week before this, we could do no wrong. And this week with the colder water, we have to work really hard at these fish. But we did see today and other days a much better trout bite. The trout tend to like the cooler water, and they like that clean water. So although not too many big fish, we caught a lot of smaller fish. But when it comes to trout, this is some of the better numbers that I have seen this week.
Good.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you something else we've seen this week, a good number of bluefish. There's been a lot of bluefish in on this clean, clear, cold water. But we caught our first jack today. Today we caught our first jack crevalle today inshore, which I think is a little early, don't you think, Rick?
Yeah, I do, David. I think that solidifies it. Spring is here. Winter is gone, whether it gets cold again or not. Once the jacks show up, and I got a report off St. Augustine. How about this? Tarpon behind the shrimp boats.
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me. Got my first February tarpon this year. And, I mean, we've already caught an inshore main row snapper, which I thought that was just, leftover from last year. But who knows? Who knows?
Hey, David, I got a question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I got a question for you. All right.
Yep.
You see new boats on the water every day. People you haven't seen before, or maybe you've only seen a couple of times. We get so many new fishermen. I'm trying to get people to help me with what is the biggest mistake you see rookies in your area making?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I see a lot of the mistakes that I made, just starting out, and that is, chasing fishing reports. You get out there and you read a fishing report. Oh, they're biting good in Mayport. They're biting good. This particular fish is biting good in Hannah Mills or something. And a lot of people would go around and they start chasing those fishing reports. Where you got to remember that fishing report's a week old. By the time you get out on to that location, everything's changed. And the other thing that the one thing that probably bothers me more than anything that I see is a lot of the guys, and I tell a lot of the new guys that are people moving to this area that are just learning how to fish, the tides are everything. You've got to really learn the tides around here. I mean, we have that saying here, you live and die by the tides, and you gotta start learning your tides here, and which tides to fish and which tides not to fish. And so, not learning your tides and chasing fishing reports. I've always found what really helped me is instead of chasing fishing reports, pick you one little section of water but and I'm talking a small section. Let's say between Beach Boulevard and Atlantic Boulevard, the intercoastal and the creeks along there, and just fish it for 1 year. Just take that and fish it for 1 year, and you're going to learn a lot by doing that. You're going to learn what baits move through there, how the fish move from shallow to deep, how the tides affect the fishing in those areas, the clarity of water. There's a lot involved, and you gotta take it in. And I think the best way to do it is just take a little slice of the pie and learn it before you try to eat the whole pie.
Makes perfect sense. Learn your area. Yep, I think you're absolutely right, David. David, all other things being the same, no other effects, only taking tide into consideration, with no other knowledge, I think I would fish the last hour of the fall and the first 2 or 3 of the rise. Is that a good place to start? Yeah,
absolutely. That's a good place to start. But don't get caught in that routine. Start learning how to fish those higher waters. Start learning to fish at high water. Where do these fish go? There for the longest time, it was like all we wanted to do was fish the last 3 hours of the outgoing, 1 hour of the incoming. Well, we don't have that today. We didn't get that opportunity today because of the way the weather was. So we had to fish this higher water. Higher water can be challenging, but you got to learn it. And I've always said when you're fishing high water, you're fishing the grass. And when you're fishing low water, you're fishing ledges and creek mouths.
Gotcha. David, thank you ever so much. Oh, you were going to give us a real quick update on the redfish. I messed up on that.
Yeah, the red fishing has really been on fire lately. But this colder water temperature, like I said, you got to work a little harder for them. But boy, they have really been biting good on that low tide.
Perfect. David, thanks so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be here next week, buddy.
All right. Captain David Voorhees from right here in Northeast Florida. Mighty glad to hear from him. Funk and Wagnalls define symmetry as similar parts combined in perfect balance. Shimano and Strike Zone define symmetry as the perfect spinning combo for whatever your target this spring. You can't beat the balance and performance of the Shimano Symmetry spinners for freshwater and inshore saltwater. Outfits like Symmetry are the reason for shopping at Strike Zone. Not only are the Shimano Symmetry spinners the perfect balance between rod and reel, they're also on sale at Strike Zone for $99. One of the biggest mistakes most anglers make is fishing outfits that are out of balance. If you try to balance your own Shimano outfit, you almost can't get the most out of your cast inshore or put the maximum pressure on a sea monster offshore. The symmetry between Strike Zone and Shimano, the perfect balance for all your fishing needs. Our thanks to David Voorhees for a great Northeast report. Now it's East Central Time. Time to check in with the great Captain Jimmy Ross. Jim, how are you?
Fantastic this week, Rick.
Good, buddy. Good. Tell me about your fishing.
Well, yeah, post-moon, we talked about it last week. It was pretty good before the moon, and after the moon, it kind of slowed down a little bit. But we've got a cold front that has now pushed through, and so the guys that are getting offshore are going to have to stop dreaming about those giant lane snappers they've been catching and the few cobia that have been coming up off of the reefs because they're not getting there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about what we can do because we're going to have heavy winds all week long. Looks like we're going to have some decent water in the backwaters of the northern Mosquito Lagoon, and that's the area basically from about the South Bridge at New Smyrna down to Oak Hill. Those areas are still fairly clean right now. There's a little bit of grass that are starting to pop up in some of those areas, some of those little back coves like Slippery Creek and Hong Kong Flat and some of those areas. So look for trout following mullet pods in there. Paddle tails are working good. Also, chunks of bait if you're fishing the windward edges, chunks of ladyfish, pinfish, mullet, something like that, so that current can sweep around those islands and bring the current down those shorelines so the fish can pick up that scent and follow it back up to the bait. Spoons are going to work pretty good too because we're going to have heavy winds most of this week. So, something that's flashy, vibrates loud, something that gets their attention is going to be another thing that you're going to want to throw. You'll also find that the redfish are starting to move back into that area as well. And if you're dead sticking with shrimp or with some kind of cut crab, you can find some decent black drum action.
Gotcha. Have you? So offshore's been pretty well closed. Hey, I got a question for you, Jim. You ready for this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're taking on over 1,000 people a day into this state. Everybody wants to come live in Florida. Gee, I wonder why. And I've seen so many rookie fishermen. Jim, help the rookies in your area. What is the most common mistake you see new fishermen in your area make?
Buying a boat, not knowing which end of the thing is supposed to go forward is the biggest one.
Good point, Cap.
But honestly, Rick, people that come here that don't have a boat in particular, one of the things that I would recommend for them is to not overcast the fish. If you're fishing from a jetty, a pier, a dock, that thing that you're standing on in many cases is a great piece of structure, especially a place like Sebastian Inlet or Port Canaveral where you have a pier and jetty combined. The fish want to be underneath the pier or next to the rocks. So if you're standing there on the pier and you're casting as far away from it as you possibly can, you're reducing exponentially the potential strikes that you're going to get because you're throwing it so far away from the fish, they're not going to leave the structure, aka the pier you're standing on, to go run way out there to find your bait. Fish below your feet, that's where the fish are. And then the second thing of that is have a bridge net or some kind of a landing net that you can pick some of these bigger snook and redfish up with. Pompano is another one that, I see guys trying to lift pompano all the way up onto the pier. Guess what? They wiggle. And when they wiggle, they fall off the hook, and then you don't have anything to bring home. So get yourself one of those round bridge or pier nets and bring your fish up. And then conversely, if the fish is too big to keep, or in the case of a redfish, you can't keep it, lower it back down after you've taken the hook out of it and let it swim out of the net and revive itself, that way. So you're not throwing it, 20 feet off of the pier back down into the water.
Excellent idea. Excellent idea. I'm going to add a little bit to that, Jim, and don't ask me how I know this. Just know that I do. If you don't have a landing net and you are fishing with, 10-pound test, say, and you hook a big trout from a bridge and you decide to lift him, use the rod. Do not put the rod down and decide to hand lift him up on 10-pound test. You need the spring of that rod because he will get about 10 feet from you, Jim, and snap. Whereas if I'd have had the rod, the spring would have kept the line from breaking. I would have landed one of the biggest trout I've ever hooked. Buddy, as always, we appreciate it so much, and I bet you helped a bunch of new fishermen down there, and we'll look forward to talking with you next week. Our thanks to Jim Ross for bringing us the news from the Space Coast. Now, we're going to hop on all the way down to Miami to check in with the Dean of Miami Charter Boat Captains, none other than the captain from the Miss Brit Fleet, one Ray Rocher. Captain Ray, how you doing?
Couldn't be better.
Good. Let's see. If you couldn't be better, somehow I got a feeling there's a sailfish involved.
Yeah, it was a good day.
Oh,
we had fun.
Good deal. Do you have any pilgrims? Anybody going swimming today?
Yeah, a little 10-year-old.
There you go.
Fun day.
Oh, there you go. You can't forget. Everybody up here when we catch them in Jacksonville this time of year tries to give me a bunch of lip about it. No, it's too cold. I don't know. I can't go in now. I don't have any more clothes, all this. I always tell them the same thing, Ray. My wife went in on February 19th. Now explain to me again how you're not going.
There you go.
Tell me how the week's been.
Decent. There's been it's kind of weird that Jimmy Johnson tournament we fished for the conditions. It looked like you'd have caught 20 fish and, 6 to 8 fish was top dog, I think 9 fish first day and 6 on the second day. And I mean, can't explain it. The conditions, everything you would ever want, bait, water, current, color, just perfect, but not many fish. And some of the best boats out there caught little or nothing, and boats you never heard of won the tournament. I shouldn't say one you never heard of, but a lot of people in the top 10 were boats you never heard of. Maybe I should say it that way.
Not the usual suspects, in other words. Huh?
Yeah. A good friend of mine, Matt, won the tournament on a boat called Just Chillin', and very deserving of it. Really good team, and had 2 good days, which is what it takes. You don't have to have one really amazing day and a bad day, that usually doesn't win. You got to have 2 solid days, and that's what our Matt had. So good for him. But it was just a tough tournament. A lot of the guys who were really good fishermen really struggled 0, 1, or 2 fish.
Mm-hmm.
And but since then it's gotten a little better here. Charter fishing today, we were 4 for 4.
Excellent.
And we went offshore dolphin fishing and dropped for snappers. So, obviously we could have put more effort into it, but and the conditions weren't great. It was so funny. We pulled out there this morning and it's just no current and kind of dusty blue water, and we're like, oh boy, if we couldn't catch them last weekend, we're certainly not going to catch them now. There they go. They just start biting. Fish will give you gray hair.
Yeah. Or in my case, they will give you no hair.
Well, one of the two.
That also happens. That's absolutely outstanding. Hopefully the conditions will continue to deteriorate so the fishing gets better. I got to tell you, Ray, you brought to mind a few years ago, I had one of our wounded warriors that we take, wanted to catch one, never caught one, wanted so bad. So I talked to a buddy of mine that came in with, I think he had 7 or 8 flags flying. And I said, where? And he said, all right, I'm going to give you a number. And no matter what you see when you get there, you have to stop. And I said, okay. So I got there, Ray. That was the slimiest, nastiest, greenest water you ever saw. You couldn't see a thing down in it. Yeah. And unless the fish stuck a tail up or a fin or something, you didn't see him when he bit. And we still, I don't remember, I think we caught 4 or 5, but it was just, you never would have fished it. Even the weeds, you know how what sargassum looks like when it's dead, right?
Yeah.
All the sargassum was dead. I mean, it was just terrible. Hey, I got a question for you. You maybe more so than anybody on this podcast. We're taking on so many people every day into Florida. We're getting new fishermen like crazy. What's the biggest mistake you see rookies making in your area?
Well, number one, I'd say don't be too proud to ask questions at your local tackle shop or pier, local charter captains. I think probably the smartest thing they could do, and I'm not saying it because I am a charter captain, but the best thing they could do is go fishing, charter a couple boats in the areas that they like, and realize that the wealth of knowledge they'll gain in a day of fishing will far surpass what they could gain in 10 days of fishing on their own.
Boy, did you hit the nail on the head. I am many years out of the charter business, and I can tell you that is without a doubt the best advice. And even when I do a seminar, Ray, I'll do like, say, a king mackerel seminar, and I'll tell people, I said, now I can stand up here and show you every rig I ever made and how to catch your bait and do everything. If you're trolling 1 knot too fast, none of this has done you any good. So you're right. There's no substitute. And you know me, I was smart enough to come spend a day on the bridge of the Miss Brit, and I'd love to spend another day. I promise you that.
Yeah. Well, you're always welcome, bud.
But I always want to be a better sail fisherman, and I know one man that can make me that. Ray, thank you. Thank you so much, and please tell me we can check with you again next week.
Yes, sir.
You got it. Ray Rocher from the Miss Brit fleet in Miami, pulling in with 4 sailfish today. Not a bad charter.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. What? Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with Menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat Facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. All right, thanks to Ray Rocher for a great Miami report. Now, let's go due west, young man. Get over to 10,000 Islands and check in with Steve Dahl. Steve, how we doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you, Rick?
I'm doing excellent, buddy. Excellent. Getting ready to go fishing here in a while. Life is good. It's springtime. Tell me what's going on down there.
We're slowing down a little bit. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's been a little bit of a slow little patch here, which really doesn't make much sense because it's a really good time of year traditionally to fish. But maybe a little bit of fishing pressure we're starting to see. Obviously with spring break and, everybody's got the grandkids and the kids back in town. Boat pressure is at a premium right now. So that kind of just kicked off this past week. We've seen it before. Things will kind of slow down or, but they got to eat.
Yeah, so they do.
They got to eat. So you'll find them. It's just going to take you probably a little bit more methodical. Some of your community holes are full, if you will, areas that, people go year to year on this time of year. So, those might be jammed up a little bit, but it also gives a good opportunity to figure out other places to fish. And I always talk about, escaping to the nearshore wrecks and reefs. And if you're entertaining, the family this week or in the weeks to come, this month, that's a great option. It's really kind of simple fishing. You can kind of bend some rods, multitude of, different species, probably some species, people that are visiting from up north haven't caught before, or even seen, so it kind of makes a good day, if you're trying to be that hero for the family that's visiting. Plenty of snapper. There's still some sheep's head left over. They're not the bigger spawners, but they're, definitely, abound. There's some jacks and, all the other bycatch. There are some kingfish, roaming around on those wrecks. There's some barracudas, so there's some action to be had, if that's got some more advanced people, or if you are just looking to get away and, fight those crowds, backcountry, we're starting to see our tides turn a little bit. We're getting out of our winter tides and we're getting into more of our, spring and summertime, higher tides where we have that, we get the 2 tide cycles a day. The higher tide cycle is now starting to become a little bit more prevalent in the daytime hours. So that's kind of happening right now in the, early to mid afternoon. So, you can kind of be the benefactor of, having that water after spending the last 3 months of, having no water in the wintertime. So that's helping fish spread out a little bit more. And, in turn, it's helping boats spread out. So the backcountry is getting filled up pretty good right now. And you can kind of get, away from the crowds a little bit and fish for redfish and snook, in the mangroves and, the countless areas that we have down here in the 10K. But, I'm kind of doing just that right now. I'm kind of splitting my time between, the nearshore wrecks and reefs, depending on skill level and ultimately what people want, and then kind of getting in the backcountry. And, we're starting to see some, even, we don't really have the trout fishery right now, but we're starting to see a lot of redfish and snook cooperative. If you're in the right areas, finding clean water is paramount right now. And we're finding some juvenile tarpon, which is probably one of my favorite fish to catch. So,
is this early for that, Steve, or is this generally?
Yeah, it is. No, it is. And it's, we're kind of in this, I say spring and summer, but we've kind of just glazed right over spring in our region, and I think, I'm hearing from a lot of other captains in other regions. It's kind of been the same thing. We're right from winter pattern, right into a summer pattern. And that's probably some of the earliest I've seen, just because water temperatures have been high all winter long. which probably means our migratory tarpon are going to show up any day here. Guys are starting to catch some here and there, but it's not in full earnest. But it wouldn't shock me in the next couple of weeks we're talking about a full-on Silver King explosion here. So should be good.
Yeah, they've already, believe it or not, they've already shown up behind the shrimp boats in Jacksonville. Hey,
it's for sure.
Let me ask you a question. You get so many new fishermen in your area. Help the rookies out. What is the biggest mistake you see guys make in your area?
Well, probably a couple things. Number one, I've said it many times on our podcast, Rick, is, don't fish, your memory, fish the moment, and it just pains me. I kind of see people year to year, they keep their boats at the marina, just driving around day to day, and you see these guys parked on the same very spots, and it's regardless of time of year or tide or weather pattern, it's that's the spot I'm going to fish today, and that's it. And
me and Grandpa whacked them right here. I'm telling you.
Yeah, exactly. I hired Captain Steve 15 years ago, and we destroyed them right here. And it's like, well, they haven't been there for 13 years. Let me tell you. But the reality, so I'm a big proponent of that. I like challenging myself to find new water, and constantly. This is ever changing. The fishery. I think all of our fisheries are. And you need to adapt, or you're going to be left behind. And I think a lot of people don't. I think tackle is a big one. Like again, being at the marina, you see a lot of boats, and as you're waiting for your clients, or you're coming back to your boat after a trip, and kind of see what people are rigged up with, and it's very elementary. There's it kind of always cracks me up that we have these guys with $150,000, $200,000 bay boats, and they're outfitted with $39 combos. And it just blows me away, to be honest with you. And maybe investing a little bit more into that. Maybe people just don't know that there's so many great resources out there to understand like what tackle you should be using, and monofilament line when you should be throwing braid, just some basic stuff. And maybe that's a subscription to for Sportsman, waiting to happen for you. But plenty of books obviously put out over the years, and videos. I just wish people would kind of invest into that. And one last new beginner thing that I see a lot of, and I've seen it firsthand happen, where guys may have a wind knot and they cut everything off their spools or cut it down enough, and I see a lot of braid floating around.
Ooh, no, don't do that. No.
Yeah, I really do, and and we've all had that problem. I mean, if people aren't in the know, braid is not something that sinks; it floats, and at least for a long time it will. And if you get that caught in your prop, and you're in trouble. Even your trolling motor prop, that's another. People think it's always your outboard, but your trolling motor prop can crack. Those seals can crack, and you'll have water intrusion, whether it's on your trolling motor or your outboard motor. So please discard that stuff responsibly. It takes nothing to put it in a compartment in your boat, and, bring it back to the marina and throw it away, because someone will pick that up at some point. That's for sure. So.
Excellent. All right, buddy. Hey, look, we appreciate it ever so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right.
Let's look forward to it.
Thanks, Steve. The year was 1953 when one of the true pioneers of big game fishing just hung it up. No, it wasn't any of our podcasters. It was none other than Ernest Hemingway. I just don't want to do it anymore, he's credited with saying. The tackle has become so sophisticated, the fish just don't have a chance. Can you imagine walking him through the aisles of Strike Zone Fishing and showing him the latest and greatest from Shimano? Can you imagine handing him a Saragusa spinner that weighs less than his bait did and could put more torque on a rampaging tuna than the giant old reels of his day? No, Ernest, I'm afraid you left us way too early. The fights with great fish still go on today, and sometimes we still get beat. But if I were a sea monster of your day, I think I'd still rather do battle with you than face the tools that Shimano has stocked in Strike Zone Fishing 68 years later. Our thanks to Steve Dahl for a great 10,000 Islands report. Now, let's move up north a little bit. That's Greg Stamper territory in Southwest Florida. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing well, Rick. How are you doing?
Doing excellent, my boy.
Good.
Tell me tell me first off, is life somewhat back to normal, Greg?
Well, the new normal is a little bit off course right now just because of everything that's happened in the past. But we are getting out. We're not doing anywhere near the amount of trips that we did in the past. And that's really because there's no place really on Fort Myers Beach to stay for most folks right now. A lot of places still don't have power, water, electric hookups. There's no marinas. The public ramps are closed. So those are trips that we do run and we do cherish. Those trips we do run and we do cherish, yeah.
Yeah, and I would guess your fishing's probably pretty good, huh?
Well, we're down a little bit with that red tide last week.
That's right.
It cleaned up. It cleaned up this week, especially later in the week. No doubt about it. The water is somewhat clean throughout the entire bay. It's pretty scarce right now. We have to wait for the stuff to move back in. I did see some small white bait today. That's a good positive sign. And some rain bait. There's a lot of rain bait moving around. So things are starting to come back. Mother Nature is strong, but what we did do this week is we fished up in the rivers again, caught a lot of real big jacks, some snook. We saw some baby tarpon here and there. Didn't get one in the air, but they're starting to slowly show up. And then in the very back of the bays, we just kind of moved as far back into the pockets that we could go. And we did find some redfish, nothing crazy. Most of them were anywhere from 18, 19 up to about maybe 23, 24 inches. No big fish, which makes sense because last year all we did was catch big fish. I'm sure those fish have moved out into the Gulf and they're part of that breeding squad now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would make sense. Well, that doesn't sound bad at all. Hey, Greg, you're going to have, especially with everything getting reopened down there, you're going to have a whole lot of new people, no doubt, coming to Southwest Florida. What is the biggest mistake you see new fishermen to your area make?
Oh, well, just today, it's almost every charter you have to talk about it at least once. The biggest thing for me, and when we do a lot of the live baits or cut baits, is anybody coming from up north that does the bass fishing and stuff, they want to do this giant hook set on these circle hooks. And that's the number one way to not hook a fish. I tell them, I said, Rodney right here, he can outfish you. And they look at me a little weird, and so I cast that bait up underneath the mangroves or on the oyster bar, and I stick it in the rod holder. That's Rodney. And you know what, Rick? He catches the fish every time.
Rodney, the rod holder's pretty darn good at setting a circle hook. There's no question about that. And that's great advice. If you're going to learn to fish circle hooks, which I highly recommend you do, learn to put your rod in the holder and leave it there till it bends over. That's right. That's a great point, Greg.
Or just when he picks it up, just reel. Don't do any hook setting.
I can't do that.
None of that.
I can't.
Reel, Rick.
I got to jerk, Greg. I got to set that hook. Too many years of trying to jerk dull hooks. We talk about all the advancements in technology. Don't leave that out. The hooks are 100 times sharper than they were when we were kids.
No doubt about that.
Thank you, Greg. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
You got it, Rick.
We'll do it. Captain Greg Stamper from Southwest Florida. I'll bet you don't even remember the days that all us cool kids would rub baby oil mixed with iodine to help us get even darker in the summertime. Being burnt was cool, and even if you weren't a surfing legend, you sure looked the part. Oh, man, if a bunch of us old guys paid the price for our vanity. We never knew the skin problem and health damage that awaited us. Today's fishermen have the options of being so much healthier in the sun than we ever thought of. Thanks in no small part to the Castaway Hat Company, who not only provides our podcasters with Castaway straw hats, but they make the coolest prints on the underside of the brims you ever saw. You may think your bimini top or T-top blocks the sun, but as an awful lot of us OGs can tell you, you can't have enough protection from sun damage. Do what we do. Put on the sunblock and put on your Castaway straw hat. You'll look the part of today's best anglers, and you'll even be helping the environment. That's because for each Castaway hat sold, the Castaway Company is going to pay to have 1 pound of trash removed from our waterways. The burning Florida sun won't be raced in your skin, and believe me, when you age a few years, you'll thank us old guys with a lifetime on the water. So go to CastawayHatCo.com and get your best sun protection today. The Castaway Hat Company. They've got a hat for every adventure. Our thanks to Greg Stamper for a great Southwest report. Now let's go check in with grumpy old Captain Ray Markham. Raymond, how we doing?
I guess I must be frumpy and old. I don't know.
Tell me about your fishing.
Oh, boy. Yeah, we're still having some issues with red tide.
Ow.
It seems to be improving a little bit.
Good.
The trout fishing's been on the lean side just about everywhere. There's a couple of places that I'm hearing about a few nice fish getting caught, but it's right now it's kind of like from Tarpon Springs north. That south wind we had in the last couple of weeks or so blew it as far north as Tarpon Springs. So the guys up there, they're doing real well with trout. Inside Tampa Bay seems to be a pretty good showing of redfish and snook. Snook have been coming out on the flats with the warmer days and whatnot. Guys can find a day where they don't have to hide too much out of the wind. They're doing really well. So they're having issues apparently catching bait down by the Skyway because of the red tide. They can't keep it alive there. So artificials are working just fine.
Good.
They never die.
That's your forte anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, buddy.
Ain't no doubt about that. Hey, Ray. Before you go, you get new fishermen in your area every day, like we all do. I want you to help the beginners out in your area. What is the biggest mistake you see them making?
Boy. Well, quite frankly, there's so many of them. I'm not sure where to start, but a lot of guys, they run their motors right up to where they're fishing.
Aha! Good one.
And I say that because I see it, and I see it where I fish, and I fish in shallow water for the majority of the time. And by shallow, I'm saying anywhere from 3 to 5 feet as a general rule. On the shallow days, negative tides, I might be in a foot of water. But you'll see these guys running on the flat, which I guess they just don't realize that they're blowing the whole flat off. And that's one of my big bugaboos. And I've seen, believe it or not, I've seen guys rush right up to where they're planning on fishing, shut the motor off, and throw the anchor out and start chumming.
I know.
Those fish that were there that are now a block and a half away, they don't even care. They don't even care that there's chum in the water. They're going somewhere else.
So your advice would be to use a little stealth when you're approaching your spot.
Yeah, I usually shut down at a good block or so before I get there. Either drop the trolling motor or real quietly go up to where I'm going to fish, or get on the push pole, whichever the case may be. Fly anglers, I tend to go on the push pole more because typically the distance they can cast is less than what a guy throwing a spinning rod or something like that can cast. So I have to get that much closer to the fish for them to catch. So you got to be way more stealthy if you're fly fishing. So
Perfect. Great advice. Thank you, Raymond, as always. And please tell me we can check with you next week.
Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'll be here.
You got it. Captain Ray Markham from West Central Florida. Our thanks to grumpy old Ray Markham for a great West Central report. Now, let's move up and get a bright ray of sunshine from the mayor of Homosassa, one William Toney. How we doing, Skip?
We're doing good. We're getting ready to push up the mainsail, and we're going to sail right on through out to St. Martin's Keys, out to West Texas.
Are the monkeys on board? Did they abandon the island?
The monkeys right now have been relocated. They're over in Brooksville for safekeeping, so we're all good right now. Monkeys are safe.
I see. Okay. Tell me how the fishing's been this week, William.
Well, the fishing's been decent. We just had a front come through, so that's definitely going to be changing things up. But right before the front, we were having really good evening high tides. Lots of snook coming in, lots of trout, lots of nice redfish, and a triple tail showed up. So everything's on par. And if you got out the deeper water, in 10 to 12 foot, there's been a lot of sheepshead still and Spanish mackerel and also mangrove snapper.
William, are the triple tail and fishable numbers?
They are, but not keeper size. You got to sort through a lot of them. But I have found some buoys, especially in the darker water bays, that may have as many as 5 to 10 of them on it. And a lot of them are 12 to 15, 16 inches. But what I have done is I've got a couple anglers that like to fish with me that will bring their fly rod, like a 6-weight. And I tell you what, there's no better fun.
Boy, that makes for a good time. There ain't no doubt about that. I would love getting involved in that. And 5 to 10 triple tail on a buoy, I've never seen that before. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the most I've ever seen has been probably about 30 to 40.
Woo!
All around one buoy. And I saw them from a distance of about 100 yards. I was running, and I thought it was mullet jumping. And I kind of got over a little bit closer, and then it was triple tail, and I guess there was a school of minnows around. It was an old buoy, had a lot of grass hanging on it, and they were eating those little glass minnows coming completely out of the water and everything. And so we anchored off and sat there with some jigs, and just had a blast for a while. I actually caught one big enough that we took that one in for shore lunch. So, the bays that are darker, especially you get up to Wakasasa, north of Crystal River, and then around the Spoil Banks and Crystal River, there's a lot of buoys up and down that barge canal dredged out area that, you could go for targets for days on end in that area. And then when you come back down toward Homosassa, you got Stokes's Bay, and then you have the Homosassa Bay, but back toward the creeks. And then on the south side of Homosassa, Chesawiska Bay is darker back on the inside. And there's a few crab lines in there, and actually some mangroves that have been blown out and stuff that are in the water that definitely you want to check closely.
Outstanding. Boy, you're not kidding. Hey, William, you see people, brand new people fishing your area all the time like we all do. Help them out. Give me a piece of advice for the rookies in your area. What do you see them doing wrong?
All right. For the rookies in my area, I hand them a 20-pound mallet, and I tell them to go ahead and just take their skeg and break it off.
Yep.
No, to help them out, what I always tell everybody, I said, take your time, stay in our channels, fish the incoming high tides, and start small. When you get out toward the mouths of the river, time it on your high tides, and remember that from McRae's and Homosassa to the mouth of the Homosassa River, there are 4 hours difference in that tide. So when they get a tide chart here in our area, normally it's for marker number 2 offshore. And let's say, for instance, it's 12 o'clock for high tide. That means it'll start showing up inshore probably around 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. So then you start fishing. You fish that incoming high tide on the outside, and your western-facing points are always going to be your better fisheries. Look for jumping mullet is always a good sign for finding redfish. And start your routes real slow. Don't go anywhere fast. And each and every time, venture out. Try not to go to, if you get your array of good little spots that you like, don't sit there and homestead them. Start branching out and going to the north, to the south, or making, a little bit further progress away from the rivers and things like that. But do it in slow increments, and then it's going to switch around again in the winter, and we'll have to talk to you later about that.
William, I've got 2 words for every new fisherman that I wish somebody would have said to me 50 years ago. Slow down. Okay, slow down the area you cover, slow down the way you work your lure. Whatever you're doing, and you're brand new at the sport, chances are, if you slow down, you'll do better. Cap, as always, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be right here in downtown Homosassa.
Keep them straight, Cap. We appreciate you so much. Academy Sports and Outdoors' mission is to provide fun for the whole family by carrying all the best gear from top brands including Columbia, Yeti, Costa, Penn, Shimano, and so many more at prices that you're going to love. Whether you're planning on spending the day at the beach, hosting the friends in the backyard, reeling in a big fish, or gearing up for the game, Academy has a wide assortment of sports and outdoor products that will guarantee you that you're going to have fun out there. Hey, Academy has just opened their new store in Panama City, and look out Tampa, here they come. You're next on the list. It's a dynamic and fun shopping experience while also offering convenient options such as buy online, pick up in store, and free shipping on most online orders over $25. When shopping at Academy, customers are going to be able to take advantage of some great in-store services. How about they'll assemble your grill for you or your bike? How about scope mounting, bore sighting, line winding and spooling, propane exchanges? They've got the pros to get it done and the ability to purchase hunting and fishing licenses. With Academy's best price guarantee, if you find a better advertised price anywhere, not only will Academy match it, but they'll beat it by 5%. Until the new store in Tampa opens, you can shop online at academy.com or through Academy's mobile app. You can sign up for email alerts, receive digital ads, offers, and exchange with Academy's social media accounts. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. All right, thanks to Captain William Toney for a great Big Bend report. Hey, that's going to wrap up our trip around the state for this evening. Got a little abbreviated version going, but man, did we ever get some good information out. And there's quite a bit of good fishing going on. David Voorhees continues to be impressed with the redfish in his area and says the numbers of trout are good. His big advice to guys, learn the tide. Jim Ross is saying that the trout fishing's pretty good in his area. They're suffering with some bad water as they have been in the lagoon for a while. And there's some redfish around. You just can't spot them in the schools like we used to be able to. You head on down south. Boy, Ray Rocher had a great report. The sailfish have started biting good in Miami and not on the conditions they were looking for. They had great conditions the other day, no fish. Terrible conditions today. 4 fish on what sounded like it's been about half a day sailfish fishing. His advice to the guys was something that I have believed ever since I started this madness. If you moved into an area, you're new, you want to learn how to fish a certain way, book a guide. Nobody can teach you as much as somebody can show you. You understand what I'm saying? All the guys that do our podcast, I know all of them love spreading their sport and love teaching the right way to do it. So they're waiting for your phone calls. That's a great way to learn to fish, what kind of fishing you want to do. 10,000 Islands right there. Things have improved on the red tide situation. That's very good. We got the same report from there and up the coast toward Ray Markham's way that the red tide is loosening its grip, and that's outstanding news because it is a true fish killer, and it looks like we're not going to have that horrible occurrence that we had just a few years ago where we lost Goliaths that were decades old, tarpon that were 60, 70 years old, fish that had survived so many red tides but couldn't survive that bad one that we had 2 years ago. Looks like that is not going to repeat this year. That is absolutely outstanding. And the snook and the trout are biting well with even a few tarpon showing early. Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you this week and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. It's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats, you want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. By Castaway Hat Company, the hat that's helping save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors, right stuff, low price, every day. So it's a good start to spring. We'll see how it goes. The big advice that you need to take from today is book a charter if you can, slow down in the way that you fish, and to learn how to fish the tides. Until next week, for Florida Sportsman Magazine, I'm Captain Rick Riles. We'll see you on the rip.